national emergency declaration, arguing President Trump does not have the authority to move funds to build the wall.
So that legal battle is just getting started, as the president predicted how it would play out last Friday in the Rose Garden when he said this.
We will have a national emergency, and we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there. And we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court.
Kevin Corke is following the story for us from the White House this morning. Kevin, tell us about these lawsuits.
Well, let me just say it this way, Sandra. The White House counsel's office has been preparing this for quite some time. They knew this was going to end up in the courts, in particular in the West, as you heard the president say there. And so they have done a bit of the groundwork already in preparation of the suits. Led by California, no surprise, 16 states in all suing the government to prevent them from bypassing Congress in order to divert money from other areas, including the military, to pay for a wall. As you also know, the president believes clearly that this is a crisis. He's also confident that ultimately the Supreme Court will agree.
It's an invasion. We have an invasion of drugs and criminals coming into our country that we stop, but it's very hard to stop. With a wall, it would be very easy. So I think that we will be very successful in court. I think it's clear.
And as the president predicted, California is leading the charge to stop the administration. That means this case, Sandra, will wind its way through the courts, including the typically left-leaning Ninth Circuit.
In every respect, the facts prove that Donald Trump is acting outside the law in declaring an emergency, but he's also acting outside the law in trying to raid pots of money that have already been allocated by Congress.
Now, Sandra, we do expect some states to fall off of this suit as higher courts determine which are directly and are not directly impacted by this particular funding battle. And, of course, we'll keep an eye on that. Sandra.
I'm sure you will. Kevin, meanwhile, former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe is talking again. What's he saying today?
Well, he is talking about any potential animus toward the president. Very interesting, in the conversation on NBC today, he said, listen, I don't hold any personal animus toward the 45th president of the United States, despite the fact that the president has criticized McCabe's wife for taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign assistance from Clinton-affiliated politicos during her run for office in the state of Virginia. McCabe also said it was the president's ties to Russia, or Russians, or people in his orbit's contacts to Russia and Russians that made him suspicious and even fearful for our country.
Think the president is a threat? Is that what that means?
I think it's entirely possible. I think that's one of the reasons why we opened the case against him.
Do you have a political bias against the president?
Absolutely not. I did my job. I worked on the facts and the law that were in front of us at the time. There's absolutely no connection whatsoever with my wife's political activity and the decisions that I made at work.
As you know, McCabe was investigated and has been accused of lying to investigators for his role in many things that happened over at the FBI during the so-called probe into the president. And that fact might impugn the veracity of his statements in some corners, Sandra, but he is sticking by his story, at least for now. Sandra?
All right, Kevin Corke, thanks for kicking things off.
Thank you, Kevin. Another alert, another day, another senator wants to be president. Bernie Sanders is back in the race, making it official this morning.
In a sense, this campaign, John, is a continuation of what we did in 2016. Many of the ideas that I talked about, Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, making public colleges and universities tuition-free. All of those ideas, people will say, oh, Bernie, they're so radical, they are extreme. The American people just won't accept those ideas. Well, you know what's happened in over 3 years? All of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream.
So Charlie Hertz got plenty to talk about.
Chicago
Opinion
next.
editor, Washington Times and Fox News contributor. Charlie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
Think we're going to need a bigger stage. This is about 12 right now on the list. How much has it shifted for Bernie Sanders since the last time he ran and was narrowly defeated in that primary against Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think that clip that you just showed is very interesting. Him talking about how he expects this to be a continuation of his run from from 4 years ago, and also the point that, and he's right about this. A lot of the ideas that he proposed back then, which were deemed radical by a lot of people, are now sort of mainstream, at least in his party. I still don't think that they're particularly mainstream in the rest of America, but they're certainly mainstream in his party, and he has succeeded in moving his party far, far, far
the 7-year-old thrown several
with
feet.
Things, talking about things like Medicare for all, which, you know, there are all sorts of problems with that, like whether it's remotely viable. But what's interesting, I think, is that, you know, Republicans often like to recycle the second-place losers from the previous election. Democrats tend not to do that. Democrats tend to run off with a new flavor every 4 years. And so whether or not Bernie Sanders this time is able to benefit from all of the success he had last time, and especially considering that the Democratic primary was very much rigged against him, was very much rigged from the inside to help Hillary Clinton get the nomination, even though he had the real enthusiasm. It'll be interesting to see whether Democrats will give him a second shot.
Well, the thing about Bernie is that he'll say a socialist and he won't hide behind it. And now you have all these candidates up in New Hampshire like Kamala Harris yesterday where they are repeatedly asked this question. Watch here.
I am not a democratic socialist. I believe that what voters do want is they want to know that whoever is going to lead understands that in America today, not everyone has an equal opportunity to and access to a path to success, and that has been building up over decades, and we've got to correct course.
So every candidate will likely be asked that and their position on that. My sense is my sense is this is a rerun from 2 years ago. The establishment's going to want a center-left candidate like a Joe Biden. But the progressives in the party during the primary season, they're going to vote for people like Bernie Sanders.
And she could say she's not a democratic socialist, but of course, one of the things that she's talked about is Medicare for all, and all of that is designed to appeal to this burgeoning, I think, younger part of the Democratic Party, that they have no problem with socialism. They think that you know, if we can make it work, that's great. They've never sort of considered all of the moral questions that come with something like that. So she could say she's not a democratic socialist and sort of check that box and say that she's actually, you know, part of the Democratic Party. But her platform and the platform of a lot of these Democrats are very, very much come from the Democratic Socialist imprint of Bernie Sanders.
The DNC is going to have a lot of work cut out for itself. By
yes,
the way,
they
Bernie
are.
Sanders,
It's going to be a fun goat roping.
That it will be. Age 77, he won New Hampshire 60-38 over Hillary Clinton.
Blowout.
In the early stages, he could be yet again formidable. Thank you, Charlie. Charlie, here, there's another one. As I say, bigger stage. See you soon, Sandra.
Meanwhile, on to this. New developments in the Jussie Smollett case. The two brothers police questioned and released are discussing the matter publicly now for the first time, claiming the Empire actor hired them to stage the attack, as Chicago police want to re-interview Smollett in light of new evidence. Matt Finn's live at the scene of the alleged attack. Folks are trying to keep track of it all, Matt.
Good morning, Sandra. Well, right now, Chicago police are waiting on Jussie Smollett. They requested that very important follow-up interview, and as of 5 p.m. Eastern time yesterday, Chicago police tell us they have not heard back from him. It was a holiday yesterday, so they were giving him the benefit of the doubt. Smollett's crisis manager tells us that Smollett will continue to talk to detectives. However, if he does not, there is a scenario here that Chicago police will seek a warrant for his arrest, turning this case over to a grand jury or prosecutors within 48 hours. Now, according to CBS, the two brothers told police Smollett paid them to rehearse and carry out this attack, and that Smollett was upset a death threat letter sent to him a week prior with a MAGA return address did not garner enough attention. Smollett's attorney saying anyone who says Smollett was involved in this attack is a liar, and Smollett said in an interview with ABC that he believes he was attacked because of his criticism of President Trump. And we want to briefly just set the scene for you. This is the intersection where that alleged assault happened at around 2 a.m. on January 29th. We just saw that surveillance screen grab that police initially released looking for those two suspects. Those two men were walking right here on this sidewalk along this brick wall, which is a residential apartment. And if you look up, there is a surveillance camera right there. We believe that is likely the camera that caught those two brothers on tape, although police will not confirm that is the camera. And right over my shoulder here is the residential building that Jussie Smollett was staying at. Police tell us he used a small residential entrance here on the lower side of North Water Street to get in and out of the building that night. And the subway that he walked to was just a few blocks north in this direction. Sandra.
A lot of details to keep track of there. And meanwhile, Matt, this morning, Chicago police still aren't formally calling Smollett a suspect at this time?
That's right. However, they're no longer insisting that he is the victim. They are now starting to refer to him as the person who filed this report. Sandra.
All right, Matt Finn live for us in Chicago there as a very confusing story continues to reveal a bit more by day here.
That's right. You know, police want to talk to him. We'll see whether or not he'll grant them that. At the moment, his attorneys are suggesting that interview will not happen, but we'll see if that changes.
They gave him some leeway. Yesterday was a holiday, gave him benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll come in today, this week, but it's really something.
Yeah, indeed it is. More coming up on that. Also, there's this today. President Trump vowing a new day is coming for the people of Venezuela. He said this.
To those who would try to impose socialism on the United States, we again deliver a very simple message. America will never be a socialist country.
So now Florida Senator Rick Scott was with President Trump delivering that message to the Maduro regime, and he's going to join us live coming up a bit later this hour here, Sandra.
Plus, an American woman who called for the deaths of soldiers and left our nation to join ISIS is now begging to return. Why she's asking to come back home to the U.S.
Also, more breaking news than that lawsuit. The president saying he believes he will win and will get his wall. Senator Rob Portman joins us on that battle and how it plays out next in Congress.
He wanted to see if Congress would negotiate a better deal. They, of course, fell short.
Fox News alert from the Supreme Court, where Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg will hear arguments today for the first time since her cancer surgery in December. 85 years old, she's been working from home while recovering. January was the first time Justice Ginsburg missed oral arguments in her 25-year tenure. This is her third bout with cancer. She says she has no plans to retire anytime soon.
Another alert now, one of our top stories, 16 states led by California filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration. They're challenging the president's authority to use a national emergency declaration to pay for more border security. Ohio Republican Senator Rob Portman, member of the Homeland Security and Foreign Affairs Committee, with me on this and a few other topics. Nice to see you in person.
Morning, Bill.
Senator,
always good to be with you.
Morning to you. We had the White House on yesterday. They say we are on strong legal ground in this case. How do you see that?
Probably. I mean, the court's going to have to decide this. It's really a case of first impression because there haven't been any Supreme Court cases since the National Emergency Act. There are some cases previously that people talked to, but under the new law, probably, in my view, the courts end up saying this is a political question to be worked out by the branches.
You believe so, huh? Mercedes Slapp made that same case on our program yesterday. She said this.
We feel that we're in strong legal grounds. We know the realities of judicial activism, as you've seen so many times with the Ninth Circuit, for instance. But at the same time, the president didn't want to have to choose this route because he wanted to see if Congress would negotiate a better deal. They, of course, fell short.
She's echoing a bit of what you're suggesting here. And what they would argue is that the president has an obligation to provide safety to the people living here in the United States. And you think they win on that argument?
Well, I think the court's likely to kick it back to us and to say under the National Emergency Act, you know, there will be an opportunity to vote on this. And by the way, the president's proposal for the border, I thought was reasonable. I mean, what he said was, let's use an evidence-based approach, use what the Border Patrol experts in the field actually want. This is the Border Security Improvement Plan. He wanted to fund the top 10 priorities of that plan. And Congress probably has now funded 2 or 3 of those. And with some of these other funds, you know, he can probably fund half of those.
Yeah,
so
you're probably right, because you can access, what, $4 billion worth before the
Treasury forfeiture funds, and then there's also funding at DOD for drug interdiction that he can probably use without using an emergency. That would be my preferred route, Bill. I think that would be on safer ground, both in terms of the courts, but also it would enable us to avoid setting a precedent that could trouble us in the future. But I do support the president on securing the southern border. People in Ohio care a lot about the drug issue right now because opioids have devastated our state. Well, guess what? 90% of that heroin's coming across the southern border. But also now we have an increase in crystal meth, and almost all of that's coming from Mexico. And it's cheap, and it's powerful, and it's devastating. So we do need to do more on the border with regard to immigration, but also with regard to stopping the drugs and also with regard to the trafficking. As you know, I've worked a lot on that issue. And
you've been a big leader on the opioid issue. 2 more topics quickly. A week from today in Hanoi, Vietnam. What does the president get from this second summit with Chairman Kim?
Well, I think it's good. I think it's very good that they're talking. And, you know, people sometimes criticize the administration for not getting enough verifiable results, but it's a whole lot better than not talking. You know, Otto Warmbier was a constituent, and what I learned in that episode was we need to talk to these people. So it's good they're having the discussions. The key is verifiable. You know, in the past, North Korea has made commitments to us they have not kept. They did it with President Clinton, they did it with President Bush, they did it with President Obama. Now it's time for us to actually see if we can get a verifiable agreement to denuclearize. And, you know, my hope is this meeting will be about commitments, but also a process in place to be sure they're following through.
It's not easy, and a big challenge, too. We'll see what comes of it. As you canvass the country right now, as you watch your colleagues in the Senate, anybody left there in the Senate? They're all running for the primary for 2020. If the election were held today, Senator, the president would clearly run on the economy. And what you're getting for the candidates on the other side, at least the far left of that party, that's where all the energy is. So how does that play itself out, do you think?
Well, we'll see. I mean, you're right. It looks like there are about 10 of my colleagues who are running. Some of them haven't announced yet, and they're mostly running to the left. So it's, you know, it's the party moving to the left. The great middle is where you win elections in Ohio, in our state of Ohio, but also in the country. So we'll see what happens there. You're right about the economy. It's really interesting. Finally, we have not just a growing economy, but wage growth in this country, which is something that you and I have talked about before. And I feel so strongly that we needed to do the tax reform, we needed to do the regulatory relief to be able to get the economy moving in a way that people, working families, can actually see some benefit. And we're seeing that now. You know, we're seeing year-to-year increases in take-home pay, finally. To me, that should be the objective of all of us.
That would be good news, too, if it stays that way. Senator, it's great to see you.
Good to see you,
again in person. Rob Portman, the Republican from Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, 20 past.
On to this. An Alabama woman who joined ISIS in Syria 4 years ago now wants to come home. She's pleading for a chance to move back to the United States after calling for violence against Americans. So what happens next?
Also, in a moment here, Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan telling Congresswoman Omar not to apologize for these controversial comments about Israel. Tell you about that and what we've learned today. Coming up.
Just 4 years ago, spoke with media outlets at a refugee camp in northern Syria this weekend. She says she wants to return home. Her name is Hoda Muthana, and she is the only American out of 1,500 foreign women and children who are living in this camp near the Turkish border. She traveled to Syria in 2015 and first lived in the capital of the former caliphate, Raqqa, where she married an Australian ISIS fighter. Muthana told The Guardian, quote, "I look back now and I think I was very arrogant. Now I'm worried about my son's future. In the end, I didn't have many friends left because the more I talked about the oppression of ISIS, the more this final operation very difficult." Sandra?
All right, Trey Yanks following that story from Jerusalem for us. Thank you, Trey.
So one of two women accusing the Virginia Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax, of sexual assault is now speaking out while she's making the case that she wants to testify about her claims in public.
Plus, President Trump urging the Venezuela military to back Juan Guaido over the Maduro regime. The commander-in-chief declaring the days of socialism are numbered. Florida Senator Rick Scott was with the president yesterday, and he will join us live next.
The people of Venezuela are standing for freedom and democracy, and the United States of America is standing right by their side.
Well, sorry, missed it by 3.
And there you have it.
President's Day holiday yesterday. Investors waiting for news out of the U.S. China trade talks, rather. You know, Santa, I thought it was interesting. Rob Portman, the senator from Ohio, was with us about 15 minutes ago. He used to be the trade rep for the United States government. So he kind of knows this stuff. You know what I mean? He kind of knows this stuff. He believes that China is going to buy more of our products, which would be a win. We had an indication of. He thinks there will be some headway in intellectual property. I don't know if you're going to get all of what you're looking for on behalf of the administration, and you're probably, in all likelihood, as we mentioned last week, probably get another summit with President Xi in Mar-a-Lago sometime real soon.
That and the forced transfer of technology is a big issue as well. And so the talks concluded over there. And now they're going to have these talks here. The big moment will be Thursday. So we'll see what comes out of that. The president continues to tout progress on the trade front. We will see.
Let's get it, right?
All right. Now on to this. President Trump with some tough talk for Venezuela's socialist regime in a speech to Venezuelan immigrants in Miami, Florida yesterday, renewing his calls for Nicolas Maduro to step down and urging the military to side with the opposition leader Juan Guaido. The president also ripping socialism as a failed economic system and declaring Latin America is about to witness the dawn of a new day. Take a listen.
The people of Venezuela stand at the threshold of history, ready to reclaim their country and to reclaim their future. In Venezuela and across the Western Hemisphere,
Senator Bernie,
socialism is dying, and liberty, prosperity, and democracy are being reborn. I ask every member of the Maduro regime, end this nightmare of poverty, hunger, and death for your people. To those who would try to impose socialism on the United States, we again deliver a very simple message. America will never be a socialist country.
A strong message from President Trump there. Let's bring in Florida Senator Rick Scott, who was at the event with the president. He sits on the Armed Services and Homeland Security committees. I know you were joined as well by the governor and Senator Marco Rubio. So how was the president's message received, Senator? Good morning.
Well, it was very well received. Just think of how many of those individuals have had to leave their countries to come here because they've gone the path that a lot of the Democrats want to go down. They've gone down the socialist path instead of a capitalistic path that we've gone down. 90% of the households in Venezuela don't have enough money for food. 80% of the kids are under 5 or under some form of malnutrition. I think it's the highest or second highest murder rate in the world. That's socialism. And it doesn't work. I want to thank the president for recognizing Juan Guaido and organizing other countries around the world to recognize Juan Guaido as a legitimate president. Now we've got to get the military to step aside. We've got to allow humanitarian resources to come in and save these people. And we've got to have a peaceful transition to a democracy where we have free and fair elections. So I want to thank the president for his focus on not only Venezuela, but on Cuba, Nicaragua, all of South America and Central America.
The president went on to issue this warning to Venezuela's military. Listen.
You have the opportunity to help forge a safe and prosperous future for all of the people of Venezuela. Or you can choose the second path, continuing to support Maduro. If you choose this path, you will find no safe harbor, no easy exit, and no way out. You will lose everything.
Senator, can there and will there be a peaceful transfer of power there?
Well, it's really up to the military right now. If they will, side with Juan Guaido and who's a legitimate president right now, if they'll do the right thing, side with the people of Venezuela, then the right thing is going to happen here. And that's what my hope is, and I think that's what all of our hope is. But the president's done the right thing. We've got to make sure that the sanctions the president has implemented on Venezuela are all enforced. The sanctions against individuals and their families, we've got to enforce all those. We've got to continue to put pressure on them, Maduro to step aside.
This is all happening, by the way, the president's vow there and his very strong message to the military is happening as Democrats back at home in the United States are vowing messages of Medicare for all, free college tuition, minimum wage increases, even guaranteed basic income in some circumstances. The president was clearly yesterday trying to draw a stark contrast from some of those messages that we're hearing here at home.
Well, socialism has never worked. It's been discredited. It's evil. Think about it in my case. I started school living in public housing, and I was able to build businesses. You can't do that in Venezuela. We're not sitting like they are in Venezuela with socialism, where 80% of these kids under 5 have malnutrition. These Democrats have gone off a deep end. They say they're progressive. No, it's regressive. It hurts the poorest families. That's exactly what they've done in Venezuela. At one time, Venezuela, I think, had the highest GDP per capita in all of South America. And now, 3 million people have left. You look at how many people have come to the United States, how many people have come to Colombia, how many people have gone anywhere around the world to get away from Maduro.
I want to move on to the lawsuit now, 16 states going up against the president and his plan to declare a national emergency to secure funding for the border wall. Where does this fight ultimately go? The president predicted this would happen, Senator.
I'm so disappointed in the Democrats. I went down to the border, talked to Border Patrol a little over a week ago. What do they need? They need more agents. They need more technology. The technology is very old, and they need some barriers. The barriers where they need it is to get operational control where people are coming across. That's what they need. And the Democrats, of course, stopped it. The president didn't have a choice. His job is to keep our country safe. So is it the first thing everybody wants to do to have the president declare an emergency? No. But he's got to secure our border. He's got to do this to keep us all safe.
Great to get your thoughts on all of that this morning. Senator Rick Scott, appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
So the fiance of missing Colorado mother Kelsey Berreth due in court today for a preliminary hearing. His name is Patrick Frazee. He's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Kelsey Berreth's body has not yet been found. She was last seen on Thanksgiving Day, shopping with the couple's 1-year-old daughter. Alicia Acuna picks up the story live in our Denver bureau with more from there. Alicia.
Hi, good morning, Bill. And today we find out why the Teller County District Attorney believes that Patrick Frazee is responsible for the disappearance and murder of his fiancée, Kelsey Berreth. Many of the documents in this case have been sealed, so we don't yet know who exactly is going to take the stand. Prosecutors have charged Frazee with killing his 29-year-old fiancée and mother of their 1-year-old daughter, and they have also charged him with solicitation of murder. Berreth was last seen on Thanksgiving Day at a grocery store near her home in Woodland Park, Colorado. Authorities say they have evidence she was killed, but her body has yet to be found. And while the DA has not given a motive, Berreth's family has filed a civil lawsuit against Frazee, claiming he killed her because of a custody dispute. Court documents show Berreth's mother says in a phone call Frazee told her, quote, he had had enough and wasn't going to deal with things anymore. When he and Kelsey were together, it always started out good and then went bad, and that Kelsey put him down in front of KB. KB stands for Kaylee, their 1-year-old child. Now, earlier this month, Idaho nurse Crystal Lee Kenny pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence and helping Frazee. She said in court, Frazee admitted to her he killed Berreth. Here's the DA from that day.
It's a horrible tragedy for their family, horrible tragedy for our community. Obviously, it's caught the attention and the heart of people across the country and actually maybe across the globe.
And the preliminary hearing gets underway in about 90 minutes, Bill. We have a producer in the courtroom, and we'll bring you updates. Bill.
Thank you, Alicia. Alicia Acuna is there live in Denver with the latest on that case. Thank you. Sandra.
Well, a really close call at a hockey game, but not on the ice. Take a look at this. Broadcaster Pierre McGuire avoiding injury when a straight puck came within inches of hitting him in the face. He was covering the Tampa Bay Lightning game with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
My.
And that puck, oh goodness, traveling so fast it whizzed right past him and hit the camera.
You think he sensed it? You know, sometimes you just get a sense of like what's happening and you know it's going to be okay. Like you're in that car and you hit the black ice and you start skidding, but you're not going to hit the tree or...
Glad everybody's all right. Right at the camera there, too. Wow.
That close. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar getting a new defender. Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan urging her not to apologize for her controversial comments about Israel. We'll explain that one coming up.
Plus, CBS correspondent Lara Logan holding nothing back as she's now calling out the media over its coverage of President Trump. What she's saying about left-leaning bias.
Also, some of these 2020 Democratic hopefuls jumping to defend the Green New Deal as Cory Booker was asked about it just yesterday.
This is the lie that's going on right now. As a guy who's a former mayor, that shows you can actually revive your economy and create a bold green future. We environmentally retrofitted our buildings, saved taxpayers money, created jobs for our community, and lowered our carbon footprint.
Fairfax assaulted her in 2000 while they were students at Duke University. In a Washington Post op-ed, Watson writes, "Since I came forward less than 2 weeks ago, certain politicians offered to support me if I made it a partisan issue. I refused. Despite nearly 100 offers to be interviewed, I have refused to make my rape a media opportunity. My motivation was never for personal gain." Fairfax has denied all of the allegations against him, and he maintains that stance today.
This lie that's being put out that somehow being green and responsible with the environment means you have to hurt the economy, a lie. And I can show you bold things we could be doing. In fact, the energy and the industry of the future, we can define the way and not let the Chinese do it or other countries do it. America's got to lead again. We can get a green future, an economically prosperous future that works for everybody.
There you go. Senator Cory Booker wants to be president, slamming critics of the Green New Deal in the snow of New Hampshire. As one of its main sponsors, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now criticized for opposing this massive Amazon deal here in New York City. Jonah Goldberg's here, senior editor of National Review, here to make sense of it all. How you doing, Jonah? It's been some time, and a big welcome back to you here on America's
Thanks, Bill. Good to be here.
So the economics of it, he says that's a lie, and you say what?
It's nonsense. Look, I mean, I like how, he says it's disingenuous to ask how much this is going to cost. Imagine if a car salesman said that to you on the car lot. Said, oh, you shouldn't have to ask how much it's going to cost. Of course you have to ask how much it's going to cost. The idea that you can get rid of the oil and gas industry, the steel industry, the coal industry, the air transportation industry, much of the automotive industry, and have it not cost anything is ludicrous. And the idea that somehow because he was a mayor of Jersey City, which benefited from the gentrification of New York City getting rich, that therefore he knows how to sort of retrofit the entire industrial base of the United States is clownish. But that's where we are these days. And they always want to make it out to be a false choice, that going green has no costs. Well, governing is choosing, and economics is about choosing between competing goods. And there are going to be costs, and when you tell people there aren't going to be costs to anything like this, you're selling them, a bunch of beans.
Well, I was reading your piece in the New York Post, and here's the headline so our viewers have it. AOC's new Green Deal will require a ton of corporate cronyism. You reflected in the piece about the Amazon deal, saying the tax incentives should be better spent on schools and subways. That's the case the left is arguing here in New York. But you're making the case that you can't go big green unless you co-op American business along the way. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right. First of all, this is the story of Woodrow Wilson's administration. It's the story of the actual New Deal, where big